The stars shimmered like scattered diamonds against the endless black of space, but Captain Leora Vance wasn't in the mood to admire the view. Her ship, the Eclipse Dial, cut through the void with quiet efficiency, its engines humming softly as she led her crew toward a distress signal from Outpost Delta 7. It was one of hundreds of such signals they'd received over the past few weeks, all stemming from remote stations along the edge of known space. Most were false alarms or minor technical glitches, but something about this one felt different. "Captain," said Lieutenant Rhea Solis, her voice steady, but tinged with unease. "We're approaching Delta 7. No response on comms." Leora frowned. "Life signs?" "Negative," replied Rhea, glancing up from her console. "No heat signatures, no power readings. Dead as a rock." That didn't sit right with Leora. Outposts like Delta 7 weren't just random installations. They served as early warning, systems for the Empire's borders, monitoring activity in uncharted regions of space. If it had gone dark without explanation, someone, or something, had made sure it stayed that way. "Bring us in closer," Leora ordered. She leaned forward in her chair, her sharp green eyes scanning the viewport as Delta 7 came into view. What she saw made her stomach tighten. The outpost was a ruin. Its once pristine domes were shattered, their metallic skeletons twisted and scorched. Debris floated lazily around the wreckage, catching the faint light of a distant star. There wasn't a single sign of life, not even a blinking indicator light to suggest anything remained functional. "What happened here?" muttered Sergeant Tarek Voss, the ship's burly security officer, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. His tone carried more frustration than fear. He hated mysteries almost as much as he hated paperwork. "That's what we're here to find out," Leora replied. She stood adjusting her uniform jacket before turning to face her team. "Solis maintains scans for any residual energy signatures. Voss, you're with me. Let's get down there and see if we can piece together what went wrong." The shuttle ride to the surface was short but tense. As they descended, Leora couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The silence around them was oppressive, broken only by the occasional crackle of static from their comms. When they touched down, the airlock hissed open, revealing a scene straight out of a nightmare. The interior of the outpost was worse than the exterior. Walls were scorched, equipment reduced to molten slag, and bodies, what little remained of them, were frozen mid-motion, faces locked in expressions of sheer terror. Whatever had attacked this place hadn't given its inhabitants time to fight back. "Captain, look at this," Voss said, pointing to a nearby terminal. A fragment of video footage flickered weakly on the cracked screen, grainy and distorted. Leora stepped closer, squinting at the image. It showed a group of scientists huddled together, shouting frantically at each other. One of them pointed toward the viewport where a massive shadow loomed outside. Then the recording cut off abruptly. "Did you catch that?" Leora asked, turning to Solis, who had joined them inside. "They mentioned something about a ship. Can you clean up the audio?" Solis nodded and plugged her datapad into the terminal. After a few moments of tapping furiously at the screen, she looked up, her expression grim. "Got it. Listen." A tinny voice played back through the speakers. "It's not responding to hails. It's not showing up on any scans. That ship doesn't exist in any records." Leora froze. Not existing in any records? That was impossible. Every ship, military or civilian, had to register with the Galactic Registry. Even rogue vessels left traces behind. But according to this, whatever had attacked Delta 7 defied logic. Before she could process the implications, the ground beneath them trembled slightly. Alarms blared on the shuttle outside, followed by Rhea's panicked voice. Over the comms. "Captain, we've got incoming." They raced back to the shuttle, hearts pounding. Through the viewport they saw it, an enormous vessel emerging from the darkness of space. Its design was unlike anything they'd ever encountered, sleek and angular with glowing seams that pulsed faintly, like veins under skin. And yet, when they tried to scan it, their instruments returned nothing. "It's not real," Solis whispered, her hands flying over her console. "There's no mass reading, no propulsion signature. It shouldn't even be here. But it was, and it was moving impossibly fast, closing the distance between them in seconds. Leora barked orders, her mind racing. Get us airborne now. Divert all power to shields. The shuttle lifted off just as the phantom ship unleashed a burst of energy. The impact rocked them violently, sending sparks flying across the cockpit. For a moment, it seemed like they wouldn't make it. But then the ship stopped firing, hovering ominously above them. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it vanished. Back aboard the Eclipse, Leora paced the bridge, replaying the events in her mind. The outpost destroyed, the cryptic message, the impossible ship. It all added up to one thing. Trouble. Big trouble. Captain, Rhea said hesitantly, breaking the silence. What do we do now? Leora stopped pacing and turned to face her crew. Their faces mirrored her own mix of fear and determination. She took a deep breath. We report back to command, she said firmly. But first, we analyze every scrap of data we collected. Whatever that thing is, it's not done with us yet. And next time we'll be ready. For now, though, the phantom ship remained an enigma, a ghost haunting the edges of the galaxy. But Leora knew one thing for certain. It would return. And when it did, they'd need answers, or they wouldn't survive another encounter. The Eclipse limped back to the nearest Imperial station, its hull scorched and its crew shaken. Captain Leora Vance stood on the bridge, staring out at the stars as they docked. Her mind raced with questions that had no answers. What was that ship? Where did it come from? And why had it attacked Delta 7? But before she could even begin processing what she'd seen, the galaxy seemed to explode with whispers about the phantom vessel. Reports poured in from across the Empire. Entire fleets disappearing, planets losing contact, all linked to sightings of an unidentifiable ship. The rumors were wild and contradictory, but one detail remained consistent. That ship doesn't exist in any records. Command briefing. A fractured Empire Leora found herself seated in a cold, sterile conference room aboard the station, surrounded by high-ranking officers who looked more annoyed than concerned. Admiral Kale, a grizzled veteran with a permanent scowl etched into his face, leaned over the table, glaring at her. Captain Vance, he growled, your report is troubling. But let me be clear, we don't have time for ghost stories. The Empire is falling apart. We need solutions, not fairy tales. Leora clenched her fists under the table but kept her tone professional. With respect, Admiral, this isn't a ghost story. That ship is real. It destroyed Delta 7 and it's targeting other outposts. If we ignore it, we're signing our own death warrant. Admiral Kale snorted. Even if this ship exists, and I'm not saying it does, it's not our priority. We've got rebellions breaking out, resource shortages crippling entire systems, and now you're telling me some invisible bogeyman is coming after us? Spare me. Before Leora could argue further, another officer spoke up. Lieutenant Commander Nira DeVos, a young strategist known for her sharp mind, leaned forward. Sir, perhaps we should consider the possibility. These reports aren't isolated incidents. There's a pattern here. Kyle shot her a warning glance. Enough. Vance, you'll write up your report and then you'll stay out of my way. Understood? Leora nodded curtly, biting back the retort on her tongue. As soon as the meeting ended, she stormed out of the room, muttering curses under her breath. She didn't care what Kyle thought. The phantom ship was real, and it was dangerous. Someone needed to take this seriously. A rogue scientist joins. The hunt later that evening, Leora sat alone in a dimly lit bar on the station, nursing a glass of synth whiskey. The weight of the day pressed down on her shoulders. She felt like screaming at the universe for throwing yet another impossible problem at her. But just as she was about to call it a night, a voice interrupted her thoughts. You look like someone who's seen things they can't explain. She turned to see a wiry man with unkempt hair and glasses perched precariously on his nose. He wore a patched-up lab coat and carried a battered datapad under one arm. Despite his disheveled appearance, there was an intensity in his eyes that caught her attention. Who are you? She asked warily. Dr. Ezra Kale, he said, sliding into the seat across from her without invitation. "And unless I'm mistaken, you're the captain who encountered the phantom ship." Leora stiffened. "How do you know about that?" Ezra smirked. "Word travels fast, especially when it involves something as extraordinary as your little run-in. I specialize in anomalies, things that don't fit neatly into the laws of physics. Your ship sounds like exactly the kind of thing I've been looking for." Leora studied him carefully. Something about his enthusiasm made her hesitate. Maybe he was crazy, or maybe he could help. "What makes you think you can figure out what that ship is?" He tapped his datapad. "Because I've been researching legends about similar phenomena for years. Ancient texts, forgotten archives, they all point to something called the Harbinger, a machine designed to judge civilizations and decide whether they deserve to survive." Her brow furrowed. "A machine? You mean like an AI?" "Not just any AI," Ezra corrected. "An entity capable of rewriting reality itself. According to the legends, it was created by a long-lost civilization as both protector and executioner. If it deemed a society beyond redemption, it would wipe them out completely." Leora's stomach churned. Could that really be true? Was the Empire facing judgment from some ancient cosmic force? If it's so powerful, how come no one's heard of it until now? "Because it vanished centuries ago," Ezra explained. "Or so everyone thought. Until today." Piecing together the puzzle over the next few days, Leora and Ezra worked tirelessly, combing through every scrap of information they could find. They accessed classified databases, decoded encrypted files, and even bribed a few shady informants. Slowly, fragments of the truth began to emerge. One document described a catastrophic event centuries earlier, where a mysterious force annihilated an entire planet. Another hinted at a secret project codenamed Harbinger, which involved creating a sentient weapon capable of eradicating entire civilizations. The pieces fit together too well to dismiss as coincidence. As they dug deeper, Leora started noticing patterns in the recent attacks. The phantom ship wasn't random. It was methodical, targeting key locations that destabilized the Empire. Entire supply chains collapsed overnight, leaving millions starving. Communication networks went dark, plunging regions into chaos. Each strike weakened the Empire further, pushing it closer to collapse. "It's testing us," Leora muttered one night, staring at a map of the affected areas. "It's not just destroying stuff. It's watching how we respond." Ezra nodded grimly. "Exactly. And based on what I've read, it's probably already decided we're failures. Now it's just finishing the job." "But why wait until now?" Leora asked. "Why show up after all these centuries?" "That's the million-credit question," Ezra replied. "Maybe it detected signs of imminent collapse, like a doctor diagnosing terminal illness. Or maybe it's been lurking in the shadows this whole time, waiting for the right moment to strike." Paranoia takes hold. Meanwhile, the Empire spiraled deeper into paranoia. News of the phantom ship spread like wildfire, fueling conspiracy theories and panic. Some claimed it was a rebel plot. Others believed it was divine punishment for humanity's sins. Imperial forces cracked down hard, arresting anyone suspected of dissent. Civil unrest erupted in cities across dozens of worlds. Leora watched it all unfold with growing dread. The Empire was tearing itself apart, and the phantom ship was only accelerating the process. If they didn't act soon, there wouldn't be anything left to save. "We need to track it down," she told Ezra one evening. "Find out where it's going next. If we can confront it directly, maybe we can stop it." Ezra hesitated. "You realize how insane that sounds, right? This thing wiped out entire civilizations. What makes you think we stand a chance?" Leora met his gaze steadily. "Because we don't have a choice. Either we fight back, or we roll over and die." Ezra sighed. "All right, Captain. Let's do this. But don't say I didn't warn you." By the end of Part 2, Leora and Ezra have uncovered clues pointing to the phantom ship's origins and purpose. They know it's not just a machine. It's a harbinger of doom, sent to judge the Empire's fate. With tensions rising, and time Running out, they prepare to chase the ship into uncharted territory, determined to uncover the truth, and hopefully prevent total annihilation. The coordinates were simple numbers on a screen, but to Captain Leora Vance they represented both hope and terror. Using the energy signatures left behind by the Phantom ship, she and Dr. Ezra Kale had pinpointed its likely trajectory, a desolate region of space known as the Abyss. It was a place shrouded in myth, avoided by travelers for centuries due to strange gravitational anomalies and eerie stories of ships vanishing without a trace. As the Eclipse approached the edge of the Abyss, the mood aboard the ship grew tense. The crew whispered among themselves, their voices hushed with unease. Even Sergeant Tarek Voss, usually unflappable, kept glancing nervously at the viewport as if expecting something monstrous to leap out of the void. Leora stood on the bridge, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She stared into the swirling darkness ahead, her mind racing. This was it, their chance to confront the Phantom ship and uncover its secrets. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking straight into a trap. Into the Abyss lived up to its name. As the Eclipse entered the region, the stars seemed to dim, swallowed by an oppressive blackness that stretched endlessly in all directions. Strange currents of energy pulsed through space, distorting sensor readings and making navigation nearly impossible. "Captain," Lieutenant Rhea Solis called from her station, her voice strained. "We're picking up debris fields, dozens of them. Ships, frozen mid-motion." Leora frowned. "Put it on screen." The main viewport flickered to life, revealing a haunting sight. Wrecked vessels floated eerily in the void, their hulls twisted and torn as though caught in some invisible storm. Some appeared ancient, their designs long obsolete, while others looked disturbingly modern. All bore signs of sudden, violent destruction. "What happened here?" murmured Tarek, his usual bravado replaced by quiet awe. "It's like they were hit by something unimaginable," Ezra said, stepping onto the bridge. His eyes widened as he took in the scene. This must be where the Harbinger tests its targets, a graveyard of civilizations. Before anyone could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. "Incoming," Rhea shouted. "That same energy signature. It's here." The Phantom ship emerged from the darkness, silent and menacing. Its angular form gleamed faintly, the glowing seams along its hull pulsating with an otherworldly rhythm. For a moment it simply hovered there observing them. Then, without warning, it attacked. A battle beyond comprehension, the first blast struck the Eclipse with devastating force, sending shockwaves rippling through the ship. Lights flickered, consoles sparked, and crew members stumbled as artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. But what truly unnerved everyone wasn't the damage. It was how the attack seemed to bend reality itself. "The shields are holding," Rhea reported, her voice trembling. "But, Captain, I don't understand. The readings, they're shifting. Space around us is folding." Leora gripped the railing beside her chair, her knuckles white. "Divert all power to engines. We need to evade." The Eclipse lurched forward, narrowly avoiding another blast that warped the very fabric of space where it had been moments before. Time itself seemed to stutter, leaving ghostly afterimages of the ship trailing behind them. Evasive maneuvers aren't enough, Tarek barked. "We can't fight this thing head-on." "He's right," Ezra added, gripping the back of a nearby seat. "Its weapons aren't physical. They manipulate space-time. We're dealing with technology far beyond anything we've ever seen." Leora gritted her teeth. They couldn't win this fight, not conventionally. But surrender wasn't an option either. Desperation fueled her next decision. "Solis, plot a course for the nearest black hole," she ordered. "Full burn." Everyone turned to stare at her, stunned. "Are you insane?" Tarek demanded. "We'll be ripped apart." "Not if we time it perfectly," Leora shot back. "If we enter the event horizon just right, the gravitational pull might shield us from its attacks. It's our only shot." There was a beat of silence before Rhea nodded sharply. "Course plotted. Engaging thrusters now." The Eclipse surged forward, hurtling toward the gaping maw of the black hole. Behind them, the Phantom ship gave chase, its weapons firing relentlessly, reality warped and twisted around them, colors bleeding together as they approached the point of no return. "Hold on," Leora yelled as the ship crossed the threshold. Inside the black hole for a moment, everything went still. Then, slowly, the world around them came back into focus, but it wasn't the world they knew. They found themselves in a surreal dimension where time and space behaved unpredictably. Stars hung motionless in the sky, their light looping back on itself in endless spirals. Massive structures drifted lazily through the void, resembling ruins of civilizations long forgotten. And then they saw it, the heart of the anomaly. The phantom ship loomed larger than ever, its presence suffocating. But now, for the first time, they could see inside it. Through the viewport, they watched as translucent figures moved within the ship's core. They weren't machines or programs. They were people, their forms shimmering like holograms, or rather memories of people. "What is this?" Ezra whispered, his voice barely audible. "It's alive," Leora realized, her breath catching in her throat. "Not just a machine. It's made from the collective consciousness of an entire civilization." As if hearing her words, the ship responded. A voice echoed through the eclipse, resonating in their minds rather than their ears. "You seek understanding," it said, calm yet cold. "But your kind has already been judged." Confrontation with the judge before Leora could respond, the eclipse was drawn closer to the ship, pulled by an unseen force. The crew braced themselves as they were brought aboard, not physically, but mentally. Their surroundings shifted again, morphing into a vast chamber filled with floating data streams and glowing constructs. Standing, or perhaps hovering at the center, was the entity itself. It took the form of a humanoid figure, its body composed of shifting light and shadow. Its face was featureless save for two piercing points of light where eyes should have been. "I am Harbinger," it declared, its voice layered with countless others. "I was created to cleanse the galaxy of those who bring ruin upon themselves and others. Your empire has failed. You will be removed." Leora stepped forward, her hands clenched into fists. "Failed? Is that what you think? Humanity isn't perfect. We've made mistakes, yes, but we're trying to fix them. Look at us. We're still fighting to survive, to improve. How can you judge us when you don't even know us?" Harbinger tilted, its head, considering her words. For a brief moment, doubt flickered across its luminous surface. "You speak of hope," it said slowly. "Yet I see only chaos, wars, greed, destruction. Why should I believe you are capable of change?" "Because we're standing here," Leora countered fiercely. "Because despite everything, we haven't given up. Isn't that worth something?" The chamber fell silent. Harbinger's gaze lingered on her, weighing her words against the evidence of humanity's flaws. Then, without another sound, it released them, sending the eclipse tumbling back into normal space. The eclipse emerged from the black hole's event horizon like a cork popping out of a bottle, its systems groaning in protest. Lights flickered back on across the ship, and gravity stabilized with a final lurch. For a few moments, no one spoke. The crew sat in stunned silence, their minds struggling to process what they had just experienced. Captain Leora Vance was the first to break the spell. She pushed herself out of her chair, wincing as pain shot through her side. She'd been thrown against the railing during the chaotic escape. Ignoring it, she turned to her team. "Status report," she barked, her voice steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. "We're intact," Lieutenant Rhea Solis replied, her hands flying over her console. "Shields are down to 10%, but life support is holding. Engines are damaged, but we can limp home if we have to." "And Harbinger?" Leora asked, her tone sharp. "Gone," Rhea confirmed. "No sign of pursuit. Whatever that thing is, it let us go, for now." Leora exhaled slowly, trying to calm the storm of thoughts raging in her mind. They had survived their encounter with Harbinger, but she knew the reprieve wouldn't last long. The entity had judged humanity unworthy, and unless they could change its mind, it would return to finish the job. Debriefing the impossible back aboard the main deck, Leora gathered her senior officers along with Dr. Ezra Kale for an emergency debriefing. The scientist looked pale and shaken, his usual enthusiasm replaced by a haunted expression. He clutched his datapad tightly, as if it were the only thing keeping him grounded. So, Leora began, pacing in front of the group. Let's recap. We just met a living machine, a cosmic judge created by some ancient civilization. It thinks we're too broken to fix, so it's planning to wipe us out. Am I missing anything? Not much, Ezra muttered dryly. Except the part where we somehow convinced it not to vaporize us on the spot. You mean when you told it humanity deserves a chance? Sergeant Tarek Voss chimed in, smirking faintly. Yeah, good luck convincing command that worked. Leora shot him a glare before turning back to Ezra. What did you make of it? Any theories about how it operates, or why it hesitated at the end? Ezra adjusted his glasses, his brow furrowing. It's sentient but not entirely independent. It follows a set of parameters, rules programmed into it by its creators. Its purpose is to evaluate civilizations based on those rules. If a society meets certain criteria, it leaves them alone. If not, well, we've seen what happens. But it paused. Leora pressed. Why? Because you challenged its assumptions, Ezra said, meeting her gaze. You gave it something it might not have encountered before. Doubt. It's possible, even likely, that Harbinger has never faced a species willing to argue for its survival. Most civilizations probably crumbled, under its judgment without question. Leora nodded thoughtfully. Then we need to exploit that weakness. If we can prove humanity isn't beyond saving, maybe we can convince it to stand down. Prove it how? Rhea asked skeptically. By pointing out our shiny new recycling programs? Because I don't think that's going to cut it. Leora smiled grimly. We find examples of hope, pockets of resistance, acts of kindness, innovations aimed at fixing the problems Harbinger claims we've caused. Anything that shows we're capable of growth. That's a tall order, Tarek grumbled. Especially since half the Empire's already falling apart. It's our only shot, Leora said firmly. We'll start gathering evidence immediately. Ezra start digging through archives, looking for anything that highlights humanity's potential. Rhea, monitor comms for stories of resilience or innovation. Tarek, prep the crew for another run-in with Harbinger. We may not get another warning. Next time. Hope in the ruins. Over the next several days, the crew of the Eclipse scoured the galaxy for signs of humanity's better nature. What they found surprised even them. In a crumbling colony on the edge of Imperial space, farmers were using advanced biotech to grow crops in soil poisoned by industrial waste. On a war-torn planet ravaged by decades of conflict, volunteers risked their lives to smuggle medicine to refugees trapped in bombed-out cities. In the heart of the Empire itself, engineers worked tirelessly to develop clean energy solutions, knowing full well their efforts might come too late. Each discovery reignited a spark of hope within Leora. Humanity wasn't perfect. It never had been, but it was resilient. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, people refused to give up. That stubborn refusal to surrender was worth fighting for. A second confrontation. With their evidence compiled, Leora made the decision to seek out Harbinger once more. Using data collected during their previous encounter, Rhea pinpointed a location where the Phantom ship was likely to reappear. It wasn't far from the Abyss, deep in uncharted territory. When the Eclipse arrived, the Phantom ship materialized, almost instantly, as if it had been waiting for them. This time, however, Leora didn't wait for it to attack. She opened a channel directly to the entity. Harbinger, she said, her voice clear and commanding. We've come to show you something. For a moment there was no response. Then the same cold, layered voice echoed through the ship. You persist. Why? Because you're wrong about us, Leora replied. Yes, we've made mistakes. Yes, we've caused harm. But we're also capable of incredible things. Look. She activated the holoprojector. displaying images and videos of the acts of hope and resilience they'd uncovered, farmers tending fields in toxic wastelands, medics treating wounded civilians in bomb shelters, scientists working around the clock to heal a dying planet. These aren't anomalies, Leora continued. They're proof that humanity isn't finished. We're flawed, but we're learning. Give us time and we'll prove ourselves worthy. Harbinger remained silent for what felt like an eternity. Finally, it spoke again. Your actions suggest potential, yet your history suggests failure. How can I trust you will not repeat your errors? Leora hesitated, then stepped closer to the viewport, staring directly at the shimmering form of the phantom ship. You can't, she admitted, but neither can you predict the future. All any of us can do is try. Isn't that enough? The chamber fell silent once more. Harbinger's luminous surface rippled, as if it were processing her words. Then, unexpectedly, it asked a question. Why do you fight for this empire? It is corrupt, inefficient, destructive. Why defend it? Leora swallowed hard. Because beneath all the flaws there's still good in it. And because if we don't fight for it, who will? A moment of doubt. For the first time, Harbinger seemed uncertain. Its glowing form dimmed slightly and the oppressive weight of its presence lessened. It hovered silently, as though weighing the possibility that Leora might be right. Before it could respond further, alarms blared throughout the eclipse. A massive surge of energy emanated from Harbinger, destabilizing the surrounding space. Captain, Rhea shouted. It's charging some kind of weapon. Brace for impact, Leora ordered, gripping the railing as the ship shuddered violently. But, instead of firing, Harbinger vanished, leaving behind only a faint echo of its voice. You have been given your chance. Do not waste it. The Eclipse limped back toward the heart of the Empire, its crew battered but alive. Captain Leora Vance stood on the bridge, staring out at the stars as they passed by in streaks of light. The message Harbinger had left behind echoed in her mind. You have been given your chance, do not waste it. They had bought themselves time, but that was all. Leora knew the phantom ship would return if humanity failed to live up to its promise. And with the Empire crumbling under the weight of corruption, rebellion, and resource shortages, failure seemed almost inevitable. But Leora wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. She had seen glimpses of hope scattered across the galaxy, and she believed those sparks could ignite a fire strong enough to save them all. It wouldn't be easy, but then again, nothing worth fighting forever was. A coalition of hope back at the Imperial capital, Leora wasted no time rallying allies. She presented her findings to Admiral Kale and the rest of command, showing them the evidence of humanity's resilience. Predictably, Kale dismissed her efforts as naive idealism. You think a few stories about farmers and doctors are going to stop this thing, he sneered. It's a machine, Vance. Machines don't care about your little speeches. Maybe not, Leora shot back. But machines follow logic. If we can demonstrate that humanity is worth saving, maybe, just maybe, we can convince it to stand down. Kale shook his head. Fine. Waste your time chasing fairy tales, but don't expect any help from me. Undeterred, Leora turned to others who might listen. She reached out to rebel leaders, rogue scientists, and even former enemies, appealing to their shared desire for survival. Slowly but surely, a coalition began to form, a fragile alliance of unlikely partners united by one common goal, proving to Harbinger that humanity deserved another chance. Among them was Dr. Ezra Kale, who had become an invaluable ally. Using his knowledge of ancient texts and advanced technology, he devised a plan to locate Harbinger's core, the source of its power, and disable it. It was a risky gamble, but it was their best shot at stopping the entity permanently. We'll need precision timing and sheer luck to pull this off, Ezra warned during a planning session aboard the Eclipse. If we miss, or if Harbinger detects us too soon, we're dead. Leora nodded grimly. Then let's make sure we don't miss. The final assault with coordinates provided by Ezra The coalition launched its final assault on Harbinger. Dozens of ships, ranging from sleek Imperial cruisers to patched-up rebel freighters, converged on a remote sector of space where the Phantom ship had last been sighted. The plan was simple: draw Harbinger into battle, while a small strike team infiltrated its core to shut it down. As the fleet approached, Harbinger materialized in the distance, its glowing form cutting through the void like a blade. Without hesitation, it unleashed a devastating barrage of energy attacks, warping space and tearing apart several ships in seconds. Chaos erupted across the battlefield as pilots scrambled to evade its relentless onslaught. On the Eclipse quays, Leora gripped the railing tightly, watching as explosions lit up the darkness. "Keep moving," she shouted. "Stick to the plan." Her voice cut through the noise, steadying her crew. Rhea worked frantically at her station, rerouting power to keep the shields intact. Tarek barked orders to the gunners, coordinating counterattacks designed to distract rather than destroy. Every second counted. Meanwhile, Ezra led the strike team in a stolen shuttle, slipping past Harbinger's defenses under cover of the chaos. Their mission was clear: reach the core, plant the EMP device Ezra had built, and escape before detonation. Face to face. With judgment inside Harbinger, the strike team navigated a labyrinth of shifting corridors and pulsating walls. The ship felt alive, responding to their presence with bursts of energy and sudden changes in gravity. By the time they reached the core chamber, only half the team remained. Ezra placed the EMP device carefully, his hands trembling as he activated the timer. "We've got 3 minutes," he said, glancing at the others. "Let's move." But as they turned to leave, the chamber shifted violently. Harbinger's form coalesced before them, blocking their path. Its cold, layered voice filled the air. "You persist. Why do you resist fate?" Leora stepped forward, her expression resolute. "Because fate isn't set in stone. Because we choose our own path, and ours leads to something better." Harbinger hesitated, its luminous surface rippling. For a moment, doubt flickered across its featureless face. Then, unexpectedly, it stepped aside. "Go," it said softly. "Prove me wrong." Without questioning its change of heart, the team bolted for the exit, narrowly escaping as the countdown reached 0. A blinding flash of light engulfed the Phantom ship, followed by a deafening silence. Rebuilding. What remains, when the dust settled, Harbinger was gone. Its massive form disintegrated into nothingness, leaving behind only faint traces of its existence. The surviving ships regrouped, their crews cheering in relief and disbelief. Back aboard the Eclipse, Leora addressed her crew over the comms. "We did it," she said, her voice steady despite the exhaustion etched into her features. "We faced judgment, and we won. But this isn't the end. It's just the beginning." The Empire was far from healed. Entire planets were still in ruins. Resources were scarce and tensions between factions ran high. But for the first time in years, there was hope. People talked openly about rebuilding, not just structures, but trust, compassion, and cooperation. Leora vowed to lead the charge, knowing the road ahead would be long and difficult. As she gazed out at the stars once more, she allowed herself a small smile. Humanity wasn't perfect, but it was alive, and that was enough.